Ah, there we go. Howdys and salutations, y'all. Sorry about that. Seems like my headset had a little bit of a blip there. Didn't want to connect, but I think we're good now. So, happy Swordtember, everyone. That's right, we're actually going to try to do this. I don't know if we'll do every day, but every day that we stream, unless other things come up, in which case I'll try to do these more frequently and post them on the other social medias. You know, they're all in the description. I'm sure you can find them. But yeah, we're doing Swordtember, which I realize I titled Swordtober. Yeah, close enough. They're both months, right? That counts. So yes, we are going to be doing some Swordtember drawings. As you may have seen, here's I would link to the direct list, but as this direct correctly points out, there's actually a few competing prompt lists right now. So instead of attempting to pick and choose and guess and all that, I found this lovely post seems to have a nice overview of all the different Swordtember lists, or at least a number of them, and we're going to try to stick to the official one. So that means day 1, September 1st, we are looking at Crystal. That's going to be an interesting one. Admittedly, I knew all this a little bit. I have been prepping some things, because we're not just going to do any sort of Crystal Blade. I think that it's time for us to bring in a little bit of Elden Ring here. So, one of my favorite enemies, and I'm not necessarily favorite to fight, but I find them fascinating mechanically, and I don't know, they're neat. They're neat. Are the Crystalians. The lore is interesting, if I feel a tad incomplete, really, for them. But there's some interesting foes that do not have a sword class. So I'd say let's approach this as, we need this for the DLC. Can we make a proper sword for these folks? Make sure that they've got one more dealy bop. One more variant. Some interesting stuff they can do. Let's see if I can save. Let's actually chuck this in the right place, because that's not remotely it. There we go. This is the right place. I wish it wouldn't try to remember the last place I put things, because it means that I'm having to start from all over the place. I'm sure there's a setting for that. But yes, that is right. So, first off, as we are starting to do more and more, let's look at some of our references. Oh, there they are. So, as you can see, we've got a couple of these here. Let me make them a tad bigger. Zoom us in. Whoops. There we go. Middle mouse, that's the one. So, there's a couple different variants, but I want to try to capture their style and see if we can't do a little bit of a study on the style, real brief-like, just trying to get the basics, make sure what we're designing is in line with everything else. So let's see what they've got. First off, we've got this mage, or this magic user. They've got an interesting staff. For the record, to my knowledge, all the actual Crystalians look the same. Like, they may have a slight... No, they even have the same cloak and everything. Like, same dudes there. They just have different equipment loadouts. So, looking at the staff, little bit of decoration on the bottom, these periodic sort of rings around it. I'm not going to dig too much into that, because they're kind of all over the place. However, one thing you'll notice is they've got a little bit of twisted spiral section towards the top. And then at the actual piece here, let's look at it. Obviously, everything looks crystalline, and that's not necessarily an effect I can easily replicate, but we'll see. And unfortunately, I think this particular example is a sort of rotten one. So it's going to add some details that we don't want to dig into too much. But yeah. So looking at this, we've got sort of, it's almost like an eye motif at the top. We've got kind of the pupil, and that may be more for the magic staff. I'll have to see if that's continued in the other designs. And it's very, it feels like parts of it feel organic, parts of it feel organic in the crystally sense, like these, where it's very clear geometric shapes. You've got sort of the square around it, and then the various protrusions, whatever the word is. But then also, we've got a number where it's just more of this rugged, like it's sort of just the shape the crystals were. And that's kind of true of their designs too. Like this doesn't look particularly planned. Like it is, when you see it in the whole thing, you're like, oh yeah, that's obviously sort of like a chest or like neck guard type upper cape thing. But it also, like, it looks very natural and craggly, whereas the arms, well, the arms even, I wonder if this is a broken one, and that's why, maybe that's the issue. Anyway, we'll do a little more look into that too, but there's this interesting mix. So we want to make sure we capture that. Next off, probably our best reference for a sword is the staff dude. This guy's got a spear, and it is a pain, let me tell you. Although if you're good at parrying, he's not that bad. Or she, or they. I'm not going to presume to guess when it comes to stone crystal creatures. But yes, I'm saying a lot today. Maybe I need to drink some water. Get my head in the game, so to speak. So yes, we've got the same sort of periodic. We've got the triple down here, and then sort of sporadic of the little rings around the staff. Met with at the neck, we have the twisted part again. And then this time we've got, well, this is interesting. The actual spear point is fairly straightforward. But we once again have these sort of counter, in this case they go in both directions, both for and away. But the counter, very structural ones connected to kind of a square around the base, like the structural outcroppings here. And then in this one, instead of, well, it is still sort of an eye motif, but less so. It's an enclosed circle. Almost, my brain's thinking like an Art Deco bird, almost, the way these wings are. And it kind of looks like, what do you expect to see on like a hood ornament? But yeah, so there's some interesting stuff there. Very geometric patterns, except, again, where we get... This one isn't natural necessarily, but it is interesting. And they do, despite being so angular, there are curves in the design pretty prominently. Obviously, the, hair/headpiece, but in the actual weapon designs, and you'll see that for sure in just a second. And then looking and like, okay, yeah, this one's not broken, but they are a little scratched up. They're still the natural stone they're hewn from. So third off, we don't have a great view of it. Did I? Whoops. There we go, better view. Instead of a sword, they've got these wonderful, like, ring toss dudes, and I love it. Their weapon is ridiculous, and it's great. They're not bad to fight. It's only a pain to fight if you encounter a couple of them together, and that's no fun. Although I hear they may have nerfed them a little bit. Anywho. But yes, so we've got, once again, the same design, same sort of tooth. Almost looks like Zurg from Buzz Lightyear. And then, let's see, we've got, like, the body shapes are the same still, but we got these sort of two rings, and these ones, it really is just the ring, and then there's the crystal outcroppings, but they do mostly, like, yeah, there's some that are straight up or back, but the majority of these seem to be moving in the same direction around the ring, which is interesting, and to an extent true of this one too. Like, yes, there's variance, but, like, moving this way, moving clockwise, some vertical, a little bit counter, but mostly moving clockwise. Most of the power of it is that way, which is interesting. But it does feel like the ring is sort of growing out of control on this one, which is not the same as in the other two at all. So it's a very different sort of style for that weapon. That's interesting. I never would have noticed that. Also, I love kind of the weird spinny grip. Gives it kind of the loosest possible yin-yang type shape, but it also adds a lot of interest into how you would wield this, because they're not gripping it at the center, they've got it at one end, which is intriguing. But yeah, lovely, fascinating, and then a better view sort of one of them kind of in action. I like the cloak ripple. You can see a little better about the actual shape of them, the very rigid, very stone-like, but still, like, parts of it are hewn, parts of it look very natural. It's a cool mix. So, having sort of looked at some of these, let's make this a little more reasonable, mayhaps. I'm going to zoom in on our, I think, spear fellow. Let me look at the staff again real quick, just to recap. Yeah, so it's got the curve, but this one's like a lot more rugged than the other two, truthfully. But it still has sort of the counter angles, which is intriguing. We'll keep digging with that, and yeah, we will get in here. Whoa. Okay. Give me half a second. There we go. Let's get this where we can see it. And, whew. Okay. Also give me half a second. I'm not sure I updated the stream title. So I need to make sure I get that proper like, because I think it may still say Swordtember. Yep. Let's see. we got Swordtember going there. Let's get that actually proper updated. Okay. And then we will just sort of dive right in, methinks. Okay. Apologies. It's I always say it's been a week, and it has typically been a week, but not since the last time I said that, so maybe I should hold off. Okay, first off, you may have noticed from those pictures that these guys tend to appear in cold blue places. I will get the background shifted in the end, but first off, I want to have the contrast to work with. Otherwise, everything kind of blends together. So, sorry, raster, now is not your time. We're doing ourselves a vector layer. We're going to try to work out some sword designs here, and I'm not going to overcommit to one of them right away. I might. But we'll try to just do some sort of like doodles. So obviously we want, whoops, let me get a color that's actually going to show up on here. Something like that feels about right. I always end up with these lilac-y colors. They're fun. So let's give it a little more blue, I think. And let's actually use the vector eraser, shall we? Perhaps we shan't. Okay. Yep, sword. Wow, let me get stuff aligned, apparently. Whew. Gotta get my eye in. Nope. There we go, that's better. Nope. Readjusting my setup. Everything got a little out of whack yesterday, so I'm having to put everything back where it belongs. Okay. Hi, you can't see that at all with the giant Crystalian staring at us. Let's, maybe chill just a little bit. You can wait over here, my dude. Your time will come, don't worry. And let's focus on the blade part. Because I like this motif, but I don't want to copy it exactly. A, because that would be boring. And B, because none of the weapons have the same quite deal. Like, they've all got a little bit different stuff going on, and I like that. It keeps these enemies a little more unique than they would be otherwise. Crystalians are fascinating. Like, really and truly they are. Okay, so thinking about, let's go for a decent sword length. Knowing they're going to want a hilt too, we may even need a little longer than the paper's going to easily give us, unless we zoom in more. Of course, that does cause some slight issue. How about we put this over here? There we go. Y'all can still see that, right? Yeah, that's better, methinks. Okay. Work on our way across. We've got some sizable ones. We can get something decent going on here. Just roughing it in. They do tend to have, all of theirs are, well, except for the wheel, I suppose. They tend to be pull weapons, but they all have sizable grips. So I want to make sure we're giving it a long hilt compared to what we might normally do. And then I like kind of an angular geometric shape for the centerpiece. Something long, though. Again, like they're lanky figures, and I want the weapon to match. So trying to think roughly, like this we'd have to do like the twisted section for, right? Like they all have that. Even I think the ring has that on its actual thing, like on where it's gripped. So we'll have to get some sort of twisties going on in there. Now most of them ended sort of in a point, like they had like kind of the loopsy doodles around, and there was some thought to it, and then kind of just a jagged point. I'm kind of, well, that's gone a little too wide, but that's fine. We're just blasting stuff in right now. You can sort of scooch it down temporarily. Zoop. Pop it on the end. Pop it right on the end. There we go. Modular swords. Pop pieces in and out all you want. Okay. Now, I do think one thing we definitely want to have are pretty much all of them have some of the spike protrusions, usually back towards the wielder. And a lot of them kind of have like this square piece around the actual well, area where those are sort of connecting. I do kind of want to not just be too bland with it, so let's actually get something like this. It's not directly on this diamond piece. like a 2-tier thing there, and then just placeholders. We could even go for a triple. I think a lot of them went for 4s on the other. And we could sort of try to, or at least they weren't consistent, and I want to make sure that we're consistent in our inconsistency, you know? There we go. Again, we're just roughing stuff in right now. Does feel like this ought to have like a little more coming out of it. Maybe something like that. We'd sort of look at the Crystalians' chest plate even for something there. And then the blade, again, like I don't want to mimic this one exactly because it's A, a spear point, and B, well, I just don't want to replicate stuff one-to-one. So I'm trying to think how we want to look at the blade. Truthfully, symmetry is kind of a big deal with these guys. Not perfect symmetry, mind. Like, even their shoulder covering isn't perfectly symmetrical. They wear it off to one side, and the weapons aren't perfectly symmetrical either. But it does make me think, like, we may not want to do, like, a scimitar or anything like that. They're not really dodgy, quick characters either, which is sort of the stereotypical association for Elden Ring weapons, is that if you got blades like scimitars or twin blades or anything like that, not that those are similar at all, but it sort of gives the implication that it's going to be a quick, fast item, and these guys aren't really that. And that almost looks like a lance. Okay, I'm going to actually use our line tool for a half. Whoa, not at that size, though. Just give me something quick. A very slight taper inward. And then we can sort of go from there. Like, we could do that, and I do want to match the other one insofar as it's got sort of like this at the tip, and then genuinely has like a ridge along the middle. It is more of a spear thing than a sword thing, but it's not exclusive to one or the other. And we could even sort of extend that out a little bit, see what we can do with that. Really get this sort of dug in deep here. I'd almost want it to like keep going all the way at that point. Or at least further than it currently does. We might be able to get away with something like that. We'll see, you know? We'll give it a go and see. Still has to look like something that could have been carved from stone. Let's give these wings like a little bit more of an up to them. It'll help parallel the actual outcroppings there, and it'll make where this connects a little more interesting than just a flat line, because flat line just really does make it look like separate modular parts that were shoved together, which we don't really want. So yeah, they've got sort of their crystal patches on it. So on, I'm just throwing those down real quick, because I'm trying to do ideation and iteration on here. Okay, so there's sort of one. That's something we could work with. Let's look at another blade type, though. Just sort of throwing this down. Because there is still plenty of room for stuff that is asymmetrical. Especially with these guys, because they're not really your typical Elden Ring fare. They're clearly like not local to the region. So we could sort of get some stuff like this, maybe. Maybe even like that. Just really go all in on it. And then the hilt. Sort of. Because again, they've got this symmetry but not perfect symmetry thing. And I kind of like that. That said, I do want to make sure that we've got a few of the key design elements that they've established as being very much these guys' thing. One of those is I do still like the twisty hilt. Actually, maybe that's what we could even do on the blade itself, is continue some of that along. It might be a little silly to do that, but, you know, we'll see. It ends up making it look like some sort of retro... This is starting to look more like a retro arcade blade. Maybe we'll have to keep that in mind for the future. Make it more like the Staff's point. Yeah, I don't know. That looks more like a spaceship that belongs in the old Dune movie from the 60s. The movie that never was. Not that I could aspire to have that level of design, artiste creativity. Let's see. Other thing. We could... Okay, here's a thought. Let's think of this as actually just being carved from an actual, like, mineral hexagon here. We're talking that this is some, like, actual quartz. That's what I'm looking for. Quartz formation that's sort of just been whacked in half. Because some of their stuff is really finely refined, and some of it just isn't. And it's a really oddball contrast. The idea that this would sort of just go into some organic shape back here. It wouldn't even have like a defined start and stop. Nah, well, I mean, there'd be some amount. Just like sort of the more natural stone shapes. Still sharp, mind. Nothing soft and rounded about these designs except, well, they've got the circular motif, but it's still a very precise circular. Like, even the hair is a precise circular. I think their weapons tend to be a little better refined than this. Could sort of go for the eye motif. Get our 4 points going here. And then just lead that right into the sort of slidey hilt. And even go for a perfect point on the back end. This doesn't really end up looking quite like the concave, convex thing I'd hoped it would. And if anything, that's sort of a design that would work better for a spear anyway. Next one. Actually, I need to check, swap my reference real quick. Let's, moving down. Zoop, zoop, zoop. Let's look at the blade on these, because it's super different. And it's got sort of like these crystal barbs on it that are fascinating and really weird. So let's sort of think about that, maybe. I'm just going to throw down one line as sort of like my center point for this one. Make sure we keep things nice and level. Let's see. I still don't want to do a curved blade because I really don't think, as much as like you see it in this design, I don't think that's kind of FromSoft's language would allow one here. Because that's just not how these guys move. But I am down with sort of having like one of these crystal clusters at the back end instead of a proper spike. And let's make this section real long. Okay. Ideation, we're trying to design a new thing from scratch here and go like design to finish in one day. That's the goal. Don't overthink it, just sort of let things happen. So, assuming a perfectly square gem, because that's something that'd be an interesting twist. Let's lean into the angular even more. And assuming that it's got kind of like something sort of around it, I guess it'd really need to sort of look more like this, wouldn't it? If it's really going around the square. And this just leads, I don't know, right into it. Maybe we need to look at how they're doing some of their connections. Maybe something more like that. We'll see. Point being, this would then have, let's do a few spikes out, one from each section here. I realize this is mirroring the spear more. We could, you know, we won't do the inner spikes this time so much. We'll just have like one form that does the spiking for that, maybe. Anyway. And the blade itself. Let's think. You have to be pretty narrow at that point, which I'm actually kind of on board with. I sort of like what we've done with the point on the other one, but let's go for a narrower blade, see what we get. Real distant here. Feel distant all the way back. Flat surface. Okay. And then let's look at how this one's working, because it's got some interesting sort of natural crystal formations on it that I'd like to try to emulate if we can. Nothing too crazy on them. They just sort of emerge from the surface, really. Got kind of like one point. It's got like a cluster of smaller ones around it. You kind of have to have more there. Few counter to the direction of movement, but again, like we were talking about, most of them moving in the direction that you kind of want the eye and the blade to travel. And I think we're getting closer to a design that I'm actually kind of liking. We've got our square. Maybe we have the square sort of taper out a little bit, because that's not unlike the actual designs, and then just kind of taper into some of these spikes. Something like that. We're getting closer. I think we've got the design elements we need. Now we just need to figure out a way that we want to bring them together. So, I'm going to make this layer kind of shallow. I'm going to throw down one more. Sketch, whoops, not caps lock if I can help it. Sketch, refine. And let's see, key things I want on this. I want to make sure, because this one is what I'd like to use sort of as the base for our final inks. So let's make sure we've got our proper length going all the way down here. Sword's the focal point. Let's actually rule of thirds the heck out of that. Pop it point and hilt on the, not quite on the third, but they'll be, and it's certainly on the third vertically if nothing else. So it should be a good eye-catching scene piece. Thinking about blade length and width, thinking about, let's see, how you want to handle a few of these. Honestly, our first design, I know it was kind of close to the spear, but because of that, it also feels good. I like some of the ideas we had here. If retro is ever a prompt, I'm coming back to this immediately and building from it, because I kind of love it. Like, if this was, like, glowing into... Oh, yeah. I want to draw that sword. I'm going to see if I can sort of force that sword to fit for one of the other prompts, basically. We'll see, though. Okay, and let's look. Let's, I know there's a way to just automatically rule of thirds this, but I also don't care that much. Does that look roughly like thirds? Well, no, it doesn't. Does that look roughly like thirds? Move them both down a hair. Yes, it does. Also means I want more of this sword in this third quadrant too. Cool. Okay, so now, assuming that we've got kind of our locations marked for, I don't know, important things to happen, rule of thirds doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule, but it can be a nice way to guide the eye when you want to. So, in this case, because it lines up nicely, let's throw our hilt, like where it actually meets the blade right here. So this section, whoa. So this section is going to be our hilt. And then we've got our blade. And I'm probably not gonna make the taper that long, because that'd be an awful long taper for most of, actually. Yeah, it'd be long for most of these designs. But what it could do with this, maybe, because the designs I'm looking at is something between like this and this in terms of the point. I like how both of those are. I think I like the extra width on this one. Hilt design to be discussed further. And not necessarily the extra width the whole way, but like sort of taper it out. So I'm thinking if we zoom out just a hair, let's get ourselves a line going here. And I do want a lot of distance on that final sharpening point. And I know the mirror tool is a thing, and I'm not using it for now. Maybe that's, if I want to taper, whoops, my bad. Want to taper this, let's drag this up a little bit and keep it mostly straight. And then let's kind of sketch out a little more of a taper here. Although again, that's giving it lance vibes that I don't necessarily want it to have. And if I continue it further, it's really just more taper. And not to be confused with Tapir. I don't think this looks like a critter. That'd be... There are enemies where that would be a good blade design. I'm sure. I mean, if they had to give a rune bear a sword, maybe just use that as the hilt. Just a tree with some other animal, like, embedded on it. Ugh, horrible, horrible. Rune bears are the worst. I hate them. Good ol' Elden Ring. There's always a million enemies everyone hates in the Souls games. Rune bears are one of my nemesis. Which is actually interesting, because usually the stuff I hate doesn't line up with what other people do at all. I have a bad habit of struggling on, I don't know if you'd say the wrong enemies. I'm gonna narrow the point on this a little bit. I already think that it's, let's go longer taper point, shorter, or, yeah, it'll make more sense when I do it. Body of this one, point of this one. And I'll explain where we're going from there. Wish I hadn't drawn this directly over the others, but it's nice to keep them in sight. I probably shouldn't have erased that central line. I was actually rather using it, wasn't I? Oh well. Land, what, somewhere up there? Might also be making this a tad long, even by sword standards. Maybe let's bring this in a notch. I know our rule of thirds wasn't quite there, but it's, you know, it'll do. Again, I'm trying to not be hyper over precise on this one, because that is a bad habit that I have, and I would like to be able to, you know, get a little more practice trying to do some of this stuff quickly, trying to come up with and ideate on stuff fast. Is that a believable shape? Yeah, but once again, I'm getting spear. Like, you've got a lot of weight, and then yeah, I don't want that necessarily. Let's. Oop, nope. I want it to be wide at the base, but not too wide. Is the thing. I think we're probably looking at a better width there. And if I really go the full, like, all in on this, yeah, it still ends up spear-like because it just feels like the taper's going across the whole thing. Having the hilt will help with that. And I do want it to appear long and fairly narrow because that's kind of these guys' deal. Let's maybe even bring these in a hair. But then let's also bring these in a hair too. This might make the spear looking problem worse. We'll see. Yeah, to an extent. Okay, let me think on designs. Let me look at the, what did they do when they were doing Spearman? How did they do this one? Oh, it was just a small point all the way, but kind of smaller than that. Okay. Yes. Plan. I have the plan. Step one, though, is once again breaking out our vector eraser. And apologizing to myself, my future self, again, for still drawing over these things, even though I should know better. Given that I complained about it right before repeating it. In fact, as I repeated it. But the good news is I'm about to do the same thing again. Sorry, future me. Once again, rule of thirds looking remotely plausible. Remotely. But instead of thirdsing that, I'm gonna push this out a little bit. We're gonna have some fun with this. Okay. New plan. Virtually straight. Contrasting it with what they did before. But also fairly narrow. And then to stay in with some of the other themes. Whoa, whoops. I accidentally adjusted my size. Let's not do that. Keep it to that point and then keep like a really long back taper. Reduce weight, more strength in the actual point. Still probably would be like a piercing sword, but you've got good edge. Not going to be too thick throughout. Which, good. If this isn't an edgy blade, then I'm not doing it justice. What I also want, though, is I definitely really liked the sort of crystal growth protrusions from it. So I want to make sure we've got a few of those in a prominent enough places. One going back, a few more going forwards, kind of a neutral one. I don't want it to look, trying to simulate random never actually looks random because humans tend to like our patterns even when we're trying not to. But, we'll do what we can. And actually, thought. All of the others had some sort of semicircle or full circle motif. Let's use that for the actual handle here. Now the question is, how do we want to arc it? I think the smart design, well, there's a few different options. I'm thinking we probably, let's go with the fun one. Let's go with something that would be fun. So starting here, or even, actually, yeah, we'll do this one. Yeah, like a little point. We're gonna try to match their hair, which would be thicker mine. So actually, instead of matching the hair, let's think about how we want to do the curvature on this one. Do we want long and like that, which really would be sort of like their hair? I can zoom out on our references a little bit so we can sort of see what we're dealing with. Like that really does match the hair. Do we want it more curving inward? Which would sort of match sort of what this one's doing. I want it to not be so, like it shouldn't taper, it should be the same width throughout the whole darn thing. I'll probably actually use a circle tool for getting that in place. Something like that, and then we could have like that sort of ridged pattern on it. And I think this would sort of need something like that at the end. Don't you? Give it a little more. And then sort of matching on the other side, of course. Although if we really wanted, because these guys are kind of chipped, we could have it somewhat broken off on that side. Give it a little wear and tear. Something like that. Much as they like balance, they're also pretty worn down by this point. Speaking of which, we're definitely going to want to get some of the like crevice stuff we've got going from the originals and some of the crystal recoloration and such. We've sort of got different sections with maybe different minerals in the crystal. We'll see. It's a pockmarked weapon. It has seen better days. But then at the center of sort of these outgoing ridges, we could actually have sort of that square we looked at before. Although squares are always better in 3D. Let's make it a cube. Because then we can get our spiked protrusions going in here too. Now it's coming together. Yeah. This could even have like a little bit of a thing coming back around this. kind of like a cage. We'll have to get the angle right on that, of course. And that would let us land on our actual like gripping section here. Which again, I still want to be perhaps longer than it normally should. That's just kind of how these guys do. Trying to keep an eye that this doesn't look horribly lopsided, so we'll need to make sure we give it a little bit of good. So yeah, this could be a two-handed weapon, anything of that sort. Got kind of our wraps around it. Then I actually want to look at how they connect the spikes on theirs. Is it with more of those sort of wrap connectors? They sort of do like a little taper thing on this one. That one, oh, it's less relevant. The staff itself, oh, it's actually kind of like a bigger connector. I love that it's different on all of these. It's not just like, oh, we copy and pasted 90% of the weapon, and then, like, we chucked a different blade on it and it's a new thing. Like, these are really, like, yeah, they're very similar, but they still put in the effort to make them noticeably different, which I appreciate. They share motifs, but not, like, literal pattern in the sense of, like, a mold. Let's rebalance a little bit here with something like this. Okay, so then maybe looking at the full thing. Let's zoom out and see where we're at. Do we need more balance? It's a fairly wide blade compared to the handle, and I'm not really sure that that's what we want. It works with the spear, of course, because the spear has a lot more handle to go with. Staff, it's not necessarily like a tapering blade. And even then, actually, like, the width difference is there, but not at most of the angles that you view it. And this, obviously, is its own deal. Its own very cool Beyblade Chaos deal. Super big fan. But, yeah. We'll go from there. So, going from there, let's add a little more weight to this end still, I think. We can make the handle a little wider. Actually, let's see it with the curves and see if the level of detail is going to do us some favors here. Yeah, actually, just having more detail there gives it a little more weight. Okay. That's coming together. Oops, nope, I did not in fact want to select the whole drawing. Okay. That said, the other thing I want to do is sort of grab this bit and just grow it a little. A little more weight to the counterbalance. Let's just clean this part up a little. It's looking kind of messy. We'll just restart it. That's fine. Okay, we sort of got our connector there. A hair wider. Next again, we've got kind of a double ring. Not that that's easy to tell, or even, yeah. And then from within this, something like that, maybe. I think I'd want the point to go in the other direction, though, if I go with this style. Just because it helps sort of counterbalance the broken blade, and I do want this to still feel balanced, even though it's broken and busted. We kind of got our taper there. We got like a little bit of weirdness to it, that's fine. Okay. So I think that we've sort of got our rough sketch here, ready to go. We're gonna build on this. Okay. Concept designs, you've been lovely. We will put you away for now. And I'm actually gonna rotate the canvas for a little bit while I draw this one. So for once, for the first time ever, We're intentionally using the rotate tool. Woo! It's a first in Sifstream's history. I'm going to quickly move that to pan again before I accidentally hit rotate and ruin all this joy. So, let us continue. 848, cool. Normally I'd be like, well, because it's kind of a special thing, you know, one-day contest, well, not contest, but event, like, you know, I'll just stay late and finish it, but I can't. I've got a, like, doctor's appointment in the morning, so, like, I need to get to sleep. um, we could make this longer. Like, I'm still probably going to tweak the design as we start inking it, and I am going to millipen the heck out of this. Even if I don't stick with it in the final, because I love me my flats, and my, lineless. But for now, let's millipen the heck out of it. Inks. Cool, we'll ignore anything else and just keep on going. We could do Gloomy Sword. Oops, Gloom did not come from the anticipated direction. Whoops. If I just do this, where's it? I guess that's like a density thing. Like if I did like this, and like that, would I get a lot more dense on the right? Nope, it just looks like a barcode. What is even the point? Oh, right. This is sort of cutting out the area that it won't hit, so I can make like a gloom curve. Yeah. Wonder if I can adjust the direction it's coming from, though, or if it's entirely canvas dependent. It's probably not a thing to focus on today. Now let's actually... Oh, right, that's the center point. Boom! It's a sword! Make something at the front end of it explode. Sparkles from the gems. Just scattered focus. I'd even give it like a... If we were going to do focus like that, I'd probably give it a little more vertical space. Yeah. But yeah, we won't mess with those for now. Anyway, lots of awesome tools on that. Not what we were looking for, though. What we were looking for, I believe, was the millipen. Okay, Millie, let's do this. I'd call this Millicent, but that's going to cause more confusion for the Elden Ring fans. I do think, in terms of line work, I'm going to stick to this for the color for now. Like, genuinely, I'll probably regret it. But it seems like a reasonable starting point. We'll be able to give darker and lighter from it. Okay, so I want flat edges. Get the curvature right. Implies that we're entirely... Oh, it's curving like that. That implies we're entirely below the sword. Really, what we probably ought to do is think about where eye level is going to be for this. And I kind of want eye level to land... somewhere around here. Actually, I want us to be mostly below this. I'm thinking about it now. I want eye level to be like here. But that does still mean that these particular rings need to curve the other way. Now, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. This is all in terms of perspective, which is something I both love and am not great at explaining, so I'm not going to try to explain it and then make more people fear it because I've explained it in a way that makes it sound like some dreadful beast. I just realized that this kind of looks like a calligraphy pen nib. And we could kind of just give it... No, let's not. Oh, now it really does. Anyway. Yes. Alright, and I probably will make some decent use of the straight line tool here, just for a few things, because, again, these guys' design is super straight line based. Now we can sort of bring those all the way around. We've got kind of our loop there. Should still look flush with it, really and truly, if I want it to do that. Pardon à moi. That wasn't any coherent, like, that was not good Spanish. I don't think. Pretty sure it wasn't. Whatever language it sort of was, I apologize. On behalf of me, I would like to apologize for my dreadful pronunciation. Other thing that's interesting with the sword is, let's not look at it directly front on. Let's assume that it's got like a little bit of a tilt to it. And I'm gonna struggle to remember that we've done that. But I think a 3/4 view, much like for people, is also more interesting for a lot of items. It does also help show where it's symmetrical and where it isn't, but yeah, we're gonna have to account for that. Okay. So assuming sort of consistent curve. Oh man, need to make sure I'm getting the sort of something like that. Make it look like it's. Okay, I've messed up on one end. Kind of the right deal. It should just look like it's moving up. It shouldn't flatten out. It just keep on going. Like there's a curve, but it's also wrapping around. It would plausibly pick up where the next segment of it picks up. Maybe I ought to do like 3 good segments and copy and paste them across the whole thing. The beauty of digital art is you can get away with stuff like that. Yeah. Oops. Okay, nope. Limits to my hubris. Gotcha. Find my vector control point friends. Eef. This part, let's. Point is, this should just kind of be a continuous curve. Really, straight lines doesn't quite do it. Still looks flat. But like, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. Because this is not where I want to be spending the majority of my energy on this blade, is on the handle part. And if it's passing through a perspective line, I don't think that will mess with it, but it probably would. Okay, you know what? I'm going to do that thing I said I was going to do earlier. Oh, no, I don't want it to be on a different layer. Was it this? Was it this? Weird tools. Give me the weird tools. Really wonky, silly stuff. Was it a line tool? Some line tool variant? Oh, where were you, rubber stamp? Wasn't under pastels, was it? No, it wasn't under weird pens, was it? No. Now, where, pray tell, did I put that? I feel like I'm rummaging around in my drawer frantically trying to find something. Was it a vector point one? I didn't think it was a... Not redraw. There's a select. Man, where the heck did I find that? Because it was a weird thing. Wasn't the kind of thing I would normally encounter. Copy stamp. Okay, it was here under blend the whole time. Oh, I can't copy stamp from this layer? Oh. Well, so much for that plan. I guess I can do this sort of layer merge. Copy it again, and repeat. And nobody's gonna say anything. Inks. Mischievous. And definitely not just a normal tool that anyone would use. You know, very, very commonplace, in fact. But no, it's mischievous. Or mischievous. You know, I think this contributed to why no one could pronounce misdrivus either. Or misdrevious. Still a fun Pokemon, though. Oh, right, and then the next thing I'm going to need to do is sort of round off the lines. It's probably going to do more for adding character to it than the actual alignment of those other lines did. Speaking of which, let's just clear this thing out. Okay. Oh dear, halfway through our time already, and we're not where I'd like to be. Which is drawing the actual blade. Or alternatively, drawing a blade, but, you know, I'll take either at this point. I have to dig out my sword for this month. Yeah, I have a sword. That's not a flex. You can get them compared, like, they're not that difficult to get if you know where to go. And it's not like some of those like black market backwater, neither of those are the right word. It's not some obscure like ritual to find one either. You've just got to, you know, find a sword store. If you live in Europe, congratulations. There's probably a kitschy tourist one not too far from somewhere near you. In the States, it's a tad more difficult. Mexico and Canada, I assume, similarly. Let's see. Okay, we've got sort of our eye line. Let's sort this thing out, because it's a thing. I think maybe we do another one of our loops here just to help smooth the transition a little bit. And let's get this going. Once again, needing to remember my 3/4 view, so the center line of the sword is actually, oh dearie me, actually going to be a little bit, well, it depends on which way I want it tilted. I think I want it tilted this way, sort of a downward. So the center point is going to be down a little bit. Beginning to think that the center point's location was already slightly off. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Returning to our Milli pen once again. Our Milli Vanilli pen. I mean, we did have a copy tool earlier. A? Anyone get that reference in 2022? Stinking. Making myself sound old. I actually genuinely wonder how much of Twitch remembers Milli Vanilli. Like, I don't even remember it, truthfully. I just have heard the tale of the great tragedy of not Millie the Wise, Vanilli the Chaotic. Okay, so if the point of this is actually going to be sort of like this, they did always look, well, they had their weird, fragile, elegantly gathered sections. That's fine. Yeah, the point's going to be a little off-center. Because, once again, we've got it at a slight tilt, which I think is going to make it more interesting, frankly. Because we're going to actually get to see a little bit of the edge on this thing. It is going to mess with my curve a little bit, though, so I'm going to have to put some real thought into it. Basically, it's going to make the actual inner curve a little bit steeper, but probably not enough to be super noticeable. Just like a hair. Let's see. I do want to still add some sort of connector for this. Something like that. And the implication that this is embedded into the stone cube. And just try to match the curve on this side. And actually on this side, we're going to eventually see something like that. Somewhere between those two. There we go. Let's see. Kind of try to match these best as we can. Might be easier to return to our vertical to get this part symmetrical. So the trick here is that I want the angle of these to be expanding a little bit more each time. Away from the sort of 90-degree angle of this central point. But that's going to be hard to connect coherently, and then the blade itself is going to do some favors for me. Okay, zooming out, does this rotation look plausible? Yes, actually. Good, 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 good. Okay, and then we sort of got our 4... I guess that wasn't really 4 points, was it? That was just a triangular hub, and then there were 4 points emerging from... Okay, that's actually going to make this a little less busy and read a little better, so I'm good. I'm happy with that. Okay. That said, I kind of want to go back to our 90 degrees here. Whoa, okay. I thought I could just type in that. Ah! Quit swinging your sword around like crazy. There we go. Let's see. I may have to do that drawfee thing where they actually go and do the colors later. Because I want to make sure we get our full design in here nice and neat first. No. Nothing like that. That's not working. You know what? Part of it might be that I'm making that too narrow. Part of it maybe let's actually return to our vertical here. wasn't connecting in a consistent place even at the beginning. So let us try to rectify that. Actually, this is a good time for the simplify tool. Straighten these out a whole bunch. And now I can just use some minor control point shenanigans. Oops. Or even just drag and drop shenanigans to separate them out a little bit. Okay. Oh man, there we go, we'll try this again. To look like part of it, just a tiny bit of it though, is hidden away behind. Okay. To avoid that getting too convoluted, because we've got one more piece in this section that we still need to do, let's move on. We've got our square here, the center cube, rather. I need to get away from the line tool. Assuming that it was anchored here, and there was one anchored there, let's actually zoom out a hair. This one is going to be like that. That one is going to be like that. Normally they'd be equidistant from the center, but because we got the slight tilt, this one, wrong tool. And these should I should simplify the heck out of these, really and truly. Straight lines. Should just use the line tool for them. That would have been the smart choice. Now I gotta go manually simplify and deal with the fact that there's some weird ends on it because I accidentally did some shenanigans. Okay, we can just rotate it though. So it is going to be like this. Its end is going to be a little closer to the shaft, and then its mirror over here that I'm just going to do the right way from the start, darn it, is going to end a little further away. Similar deal for the back ones. This one's going to be, whoops, nope. Or further up, and I think this other one's going to be further back, but let me zoom out and see if that looks wrong. Because the way this would basically work is if we had a pyramid and we were rotating it. So instead of being directly head-on triangle, it's going to end up being with like a little bit of pyramid. And if I really want that to be in perspective, this one's going to have to end like that, isn't it? And the fourth one sort of be back behind it. Proportions are off, but the general idea is there. So let us continue based on this assumption then. Fresh line. Doesn't come out quite as far. Likewise. And now if we connected these four, it would be like a pyramid, but we're not going to do that. Okay. And I do still want to, let's actually look at the spear that we were sort of basing this on. Or actually, this one's an excellent example too. They are still sort of crystals, so they have a little bit of weight to them. Whoa, okay. Or perhaps not weight so much as volume. Something like that might do. Okay. Let's go back to our lovely 90 degrees. And let's actually start looking at the blade itself. Well, nope, that was the wrong tool. Because we've got our new center line. Because everything is tilting just a tiny bit. So the blade should really, emerge from where this one is. We're going to see more of the top of the blade and less of the bottom of it. That's going to be the result of this. So actually, yeah, if assuming that I lined those initial ones up, as it's always best to keep stuff relative to other things in the work, this second tier of yeah, we've got the cube and then tier 1 and then tier 2 sub. No, the second tier though is going to be where that's at, and that does track with the alignment I would expect. I'm going to even use the smaller line weight for this part, just to sort of get it in, and then we'll build from there. Okay, so let's look at it just on its own. Does this look like it's rotated in space? Actually, oh right, you know what? Yeah, it's at a slight angle. I'm pretty happy with that. We ought to see a tiny. No, ought we? Do we see a tiny bit of the edge here? Yes or no? Methinks no. Because it's kind of almost 2D here, really and truthfully. Like, we could add something there to make it look not 2D. We could add something there to make it look super flat at the end. I don't want to do that, even though that is sort of physically what it would be doing. What on earth does the actual spear do, now that I think about it? It's sort of, okay, it's thick enough that it still has a little bit of volume on the edges, but yeah, actually at the point, it's probably not got too much. It's going to do some weird warpy things. Interesting. I probably won't mess with that. We're just going to let it be. It's going to look a little awkward, but that's fine. Once we add some texture and details and such, it won't. We're using the rotation tool more than ever on this one. A weird day indeed. Well, let's grab our sketch back. Let's see. These guys are chipped, but their stuff is still relatively well maintained. However, we could add like a little bit of, not with the pencil, sorry, with the Millipen, we could add like a little bit of wear on this, which might be slightly more believable. I'm also now, everything's kind of the same line weight. That's something I'll have to fix in a minute here. But I think we're actually going to want to stick to the thinner lines for the details, but we still want the thick lines for the border. So let me make sure we've got our 4-weight lines for that and for this one. And bringing this one to the point. And yeah, let's actually get some of these dealy bops in here. So for these, I'm going to go back to the ring dude, because again, I'm trying to incorporate bits and pieces from all of them. Looking at these, they've got some form to them, so I'm going to actually try to, like, they're not just sharp lines necessarily, but for the most part, they kind of are. There's kind of some competing crystals. Let's see. I don't like the idea of this one being sort of in the middle. So it's cutting off and in turn getting cut off. Let's see. Makes it look a little more lively. And in order to make sure these actually are fitting, I do need to make sure that some of them are pulling a little deeper into the blade itself. They're breaking up this actual external blade border into something like it actually seems like, okay, some of these spikes are emerging from the sword itself. And we've got a little more of that here. Kind of these crystal clusters. And really, they probably only ought to be the 4 weight when they're breaking the border. We'll have to do some line weight tweaking. Thankfully, with vectors, we can. With relative ease, actually. Let's see, I want to break up the silhouette, but we do want to be careful that we don't break it too much. We lose on recognizability. Okay, once again, believable, except for the line weight. Which is something we can fix. Last thing is really going to be more of a shading and texturing thing, so let's not worry about that just yet. Let's get the actual sword design going first. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Okay. So I guess line weight, let's do some line weight tweaking. Just line width. Let's see what our control's currently doing. We'll narrow it by 1. Oops, I actually want to zoom in more and just make the tool smaller. Maybe 50 is right. Maybe 80? 100. That's kind of detail-y bits. We don't need that to all be max line weight. Same with these. Same with this. Really, most of the inner lines I should probably do this for. Oh yeah, definitely for these guys. Our line weight's already fairly fine, so we will have to be careful with this. I do think this is, A, going to let us see a little more detail, truthfully. Because you want the lines to have weight where it matters, and not just randomly. And so I want these to be there, but I don't want them to be the focal. I want the sword silhouette to still be bold and stand out in its own right. Does mean I'm going to have to do some tweaks to this. Yeah, there we go, that's better. Okay, zooming out again. It looks a lot better, actually. Especially just reducing the busyness and eye-catching of the handle. Like, I know we want it to hold its weight in terms of detail because it is comparatively smaller to the rest of the blade, and so much like with actual weight, the visual weight needs to be balanced. But we also don't want it to be completely overbearing. So I may even like reduce these spikes because they were a little too noticeable just at a glance. These guys too. Okay. Now looking at this in its vertical state, with its slight rotation and without the sketch behind it. Not bad. I'm pretty happy with how this one's going for sort of a day 1 sword. The physics within me is screaming at how this connects, so I may add a little something here just so that it looks more plausible. Just move all of that. You can even add sort of another ring on this one. Do sort of like what we did below. In fact, we ought to just mirror that entirely if we want to keep things consistent. That would mean getting those lines there. And of course, we definitely need to fix the line weight on this too. There we go. Maybe a slight tweak on that part. You still want that to have enough bold to be defined from the rest of it, but I think 1 tier down would be good. Okay. We can fix some of these lines. something like that, and we can just clean up a few stray pixels here and there. Oops. I just want to get rid of that one blob. We've sort of got too much line weight right here. I don't want to lose out on the other pieces and their line weight. Let me just on the pen. Yes, I'm being nitpicky again. Somebody stop me. Okay, we've got ourselves a sword. And we will want to get some textures on it. But I also kind of want to put it in a setting that makes sense real quick. I want some context around it. So we've got our Crystalians, which are, of course, of the same color, so they're a terrible background to contrast this against. But if we take a little bit of creative liberty, we can make it a good background to contrast against. And all that requires is me just having a little bit of fun with maybe the select tool or just a really big brush for a second. You know what? Let's actually look at a paintbrush for this one. One of the paint brushes. Brush pen, no, way too bold. Wet blotting ink. Maybe if it was much bigger. Whoops, okay, that lags. Something awful. We can just sort of get the hint of Crystalian. Zooming. Might be too big. Let's think about some other stuff. I'm always partial to these washes like this one. They're kind of an interesting effect. Maybe what we ought to do first is let's get ourselves a background. I don't want to just lose the whole thing in the background, so I want probably like a soft gray. Maybe a warm gray. Maybe that's the mistake. That pops better. Doesn't necessarily do what we need it to do. Other thing is I'm trying to think about size proportions relative to this. If you've got hand there, body there. Let me do a little bit of just rough brushing in, maybe. See if I can't figure out how this would align. Big brush, mind. Yeah, pretty big brush. Yeah, I guess sort of you've got... Whoa, okay, not that big a brush. Maybe we'll stop at 100. Kind of got this. We've kind of got... They really do just go all the way down. I feel bad. They have a positively dreadful haircut, but I like their design still, but I feel bad for them. Oops. Yep. Hold on. One line, or else it gets some weird layering effects. You can already see that on the head. Yep. Then you'd need like a hand on this. But the way we could get some decent contrast on it if we need to is through the cloak piece. If we just take a little bit of a liberty and put it on. Whoa. I guess, yeah, the colors just kind of bleed together. Maybe if I do it on a fresh layer, yeah. Not sure that's really worth it for the color contrast. And of course, we need to paint in everything. We want the sword to pop. I was hoping I could just blast that in pretty quick. But I don't think that's gonna do. Maybe we go even more abstract. My eyes, that hurt going through. Too many changes all at once. It'd probably be smart to go ahead and do the sword shading and such first, but and then we can just sort of have our ominous looming Crystalian. Could also just do a giant millipen Maybe not on top of the sword, though. Maybe that was part of the issue with the sword, too, is I had all that on top of it. That is a bold contrast. You know, I was thinking about trying to do like a realistic, like crystal shade. Maybe we do something a little wilder with our colors here. This is a nice bold red, I'm realizing. We could go for a pretty darn abstract Crystalian here. I'm just experimenting with stuff for the record. Like, don't panic if you're like, ah! Although feel free to throw in feedback if you'd like. I am all ears. Looking for different approaches on how to show this. Giant hard brush, giant hard brush. Some brush smoothing on that would be nice. That's what I'm looking for. A little stabilization. I think their curve ought to even go off the top, really. Probably ought to have done the face and that on different layers. We could have a little bit of shading difference. Then we can just make all of this a tad fainter and maybe go for a less red in the background. We could go for a more pure black. Just so we're getting less of that tint on it. Oh, right, but that does mean that you can see through the red. Okay. Red, not transparent. We're just gonna use a much more muted view. There we go. Oh, boy. We'll be changing the sword colors anyway, so that's fine. I think. Wow, that red really does look like the same shade as the blue would be. Should not have done this. And of course. Oops, we got 30 minutes left. This is not where I should be spending my time. Prioritize, my dude. That said, I do kind of like the idea of a background Crystalian. Let's see. Blue's at 30. This should maybe also be at 30. Like 100 for an arm back there. For this one, we've got the other arm. They've got kind of a interestingness to them. certainly looks different. Let's see. Well, the transparency actually kind of works for their crystalness. Yeah, I kind of like the weird taper. Fits them. A little more wrist going in there, though. Not have chosen that moment to test the pressure sensitivity, mayhaps. Okay, anyway. Press 1. Press 2. Press 3. We'll see if we keep any of that in the actual... Whoa! Alright, where'd my mouse go? Cursor's so big I couldn't even find it in there. Okay, but for the moment, let's put those away. Let's think about the blade itself. Let's see. Blade, flat. I mean, all their weapons are a single color, and it's just various reflections across the whole thing. So that's sort of... I mean, my inclination is let's just fill the whole darn thing with this blue. Not, mind you, at the same power. We could throw this one at least at 50. Oh man, all the same nooks and crannies we just unfilled. We now got a refill. Ah! I'm sure there's a better way than this, like maybe just using the select tool, grabbing the borders, filling in from there. Whoops. Let's undo that little whoopsie doodle. Oh right, I don't have to retap, I can just apparently drag. Whoops, found an opening. Oh right, I want to up the close gap again. There we go. I feel like we just had this song. I guess in true randomness, that wouldn't stop it from playing it again, so fair play. Spotify, fair play. Okay, saving that. How's that look without the inks, by the way? Well, I mean, the silhouette's recognizable, and that is something I want to check, as I'm going to want to make sure that the silhouettes of each of these swords are a little different. Oh, hey! Sorry, I hope I didn't miss you. How long have you been waiting there? Super sorry. I hope that wasn't from, like, ages ago. And yeah, of course I remember you. You had the amazing turtle. Well, welcome to the stream. Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, no, we're just doing some Swordtember art. Man, I should have known better than to put my reference image over the chat. That was a mistake on my part. Whoops. Whoops. Sorry. But yeah, and yeah, no, your turtle was amazing. Real power move. But yeah, no, we're just doing some Swordtember art. Figured we'd go ahead and get the first one in here. The prompt was crystal, so we're basically building off the Elden Ring enemy, the Crystalians, to see if they could use a sword, because they haven't actually got one in their set. That might be kind of a fun challenge to do today. Man, how long ago was that comment? Oh, that's not a helpful feed at all. I was looking in the wrong place. And I'm gonna have to drop by their stream again at some point. Well, hopefully they drop back in. I'm sorry about that. Always fun to have people drop by. But yeah, okay, then. Wow, in a panic, I've gone and filled the entire screen again. Trying to think of ways that we can actually color this that will look decent. I mean, one of my favorite brushes, maybe in a more tame version. I like. Which one is it? I like the wet blotting ink. I'd have to actually no, I'd need to clip it to this layer then. That's an interesting doodad. Add some interesting texture to these though. In fact, that might be sort of what we ought to just do for the blade part at least. Let's go ahead and get back to our 90 degrees. Oh man, I wonder how long ago that chat was. That's a shame. That is my mistake entirely. Huh? Oh, huh. Why does it stop right there? Oh, is this one, like, if we don't have the inks, is there like a gap in it or something? Okay, yeah, this brush does unfortunately have some weird mechanics with it. Maybe bigger is sort of the way to go with it. And because these are hewn of like one material, it makes some amount of sense that like the color would transfer across the blade and such too. It's like going to be a little thinner, we won't make it quite as deep, and then I'm actually going to throw another one clipped onto that. I'm going to throw it in, I don't think I want multiply, I think I want highlight, or lighten, or screen. Yeah, we want screen. And we can do like a smaller brush, and sort of maybe get some decent crystal simulation with that. Might lessen the intensity of this one a little bit, maybe. It's yeah, maybe we drop down. Well, we're starting to get some of the randomness of it. But I kind of would want to smooth some of these edges out a little bit. Yeah, maybe we bring this down a little bit. Almost looks like a bubble sword with some of the way that's working. Okay, and then let's... okay, I don't want to use this one because it's sort of the corrupty one, but let's look at one of the pure ones. They've got a little bit of almost like white highlights. I want to get maybe almost a tiny bit of purple in there too. This one's a screen. I can sort of pop it down. Look, let's grab something sort of in the purples, like kind of the dark indigo-y purples. Or I guess this one ought to be a multiply, really. Just get some slight hue differences on there. And then I almost wonder if I can get away with like just a little bit of blurring of this. Or if that's even going to apply to any of these. Or blend, rather. Yeah, I guess a little bit on that scale. Trying to get rid of the sort of perfect circle effects that we were getting from some of that. That's closer to what we're looking for. There we go. Well, I kind of actually like the patchy on the hilt a little bit. Like, I'll do a little bit of blend there, but not so much. But in the blade itself, yeah. Ah, the only thing is the colors don't really make it to the actual tips of the line work, do they? So that's something I'd maybe need to fill in. So removing the inks, this is... Oh, that's actually pretty cool. I'm gonna have to go drop by Datto. See if I can't catch them if they're streaming after this. Curse you, Crystalian, you're the hardest boss of all because you block chat. Oops. Oops. Oopsie poopsies. Pooples, as they say. Okay, if I move the color in front of this, then that makes it easier to see where I need to... Oops, actually. As y'all know me, if I can get away with not using lines on this, I'm gonna try to, at least once. You know, you just gotta. Who wants lines when you could have not lines? Granted, I think we're gonna want to keep some of the line work on this one, honestly. So I do need to be a little careful around my borders and outlines and such, but I can do a little cleanup on this, make it look a little better. Yeah, I've been itching for an excuse to use that water, like the wet brush, not wet brush, whatchamacallit, whichever one I used, for ages since I discovered it. What I really think it's going to be great for is like tree foliage. I think you could get some reasonably believable stuff with that. Okay, good. That sort of helps with some of our points. And yeah. Okay. Now, if I just go here, I can fill in some of these gaps too. Oh man, this one's actually turning out really cool. So I'm gonna have to remember the technique I used. I used the texture blender over top of a couple of layers with some screen and multiply. Oh boy. Oh wait, no, was that? Then green, light blue. Okay, but with the inks, maybe what we can do with the inks to maintain this without it, although actually it kind of gets the weird highlight edge stuff they have on this. But we could try some different color. Well, mainly I was just thinking like maybe, whoops, not the light blue screen. Maybe tone the inks down a little bit, soften them a tad. But actually, there's something to be said about keeping it defined. Maybe we just drop it to like 85. So it's not quite as strong as you'd expect a full outline to be, but it's still pretty good. Let me see if I can do a tiny bit of eraser cleanup. Just with the hard eraser, but like small stuff. Get some of these, mainly because it's just like a little messy from the one line around this. Of course, vectors are, whoops. Yeah, see, vectors are going to make that kind of bad, unfortunately. Guess that's why you want to use the right eraser for the right line. I gotta look up what this song is from. may... Maybe like a little bit of highlight around this bit would be worthwhile, worth keeping. Okay, now returning to our original rotation. Let's see if it actually looks decent with the Crystalian behind it. Nah, that's not contributing much. Not unless I did the full effect for that guy too. Which, I mean, we got 12 minutes. I could do a brief one, but then we'd have to get the fabric as well, and I'm not sure that's really worth the effort. But it's something that maybe we could build on. So for now, I think let's clean up our layers a little bit. We can just do that and take care of all that in one. Let's see. I'm just going to do one whole thing for the crest blade. That way I can sort of move it and work with it as a single entity. I do think it's going to benefit from having the gray background, but let's, when we're posting it and such, we may work with it at a different angle. I also kind of like the not quite directly centered position of it, or at least rotation of it, rather. Yeah, okay, okay. Okay, well, I think we can go ahead and put away our reference for now. We can sort of look at the whole thing. Is this going to look better on this kind of background, or let's add just a sort of placeholder background layer? We can experiment with some stuff. Oh, this should be a normal layer. Ah, it is raster's time to shine. By vector layer. Okay. See, I worry it looks too strong against like our normal sort of the normal papery background we'd want to do. Go for like a soft blue, but even then, like I feel like it kind of needs the darkness for it to work. You could do it against an inky black, but it's a little too... Well, if we could get like a starry sky type deal going on behind it, that might be something. Would have been smart to think of this as sort of a series. And then have like a consistent background style across them. But we didn't do that, so we're going to work with what we got. What we got is some soft blues. Or, if we want to get some contrast, might be too much contrast. Let's go with like some more moderate contrast. Something like this. I'm just spitballing. Ah, my eyes. Ah, less saturation, less saturation. Okay, I don't know. Where these guys show up is always stuff like this. Let's see. You know what? Let's look at our crest figure here. Wonder if I could make that work. So close to being the same. Well, actually, I kind of like the very slight green tint in it. But yeah, crest one. I don't know. Let's just add ourselves a multiply. Flip it, and let's see what we can do. Using that same brush, the wet blotting ink, maybe a little bigger. Was it the wet? It was. It was, right? It wasn't. It wasn't the wet wash. It was the wet blotting ink. Um. Hmm. Problem is having it on any reasonable size um, lags the heck out of this. And this just ends up looking sort of like bad texture. Yeah, that's not really I mean, it's better. I'm not sure it's better than it was. I don't know why I thought that would work. Um. Okay. New multiply. Just do a big one, sort of across the whole thing. Get it some texture. A few iterations. Illusion of arm. Maybe what I need is like more color contrast, like actually kind of like a darker blue on this. All right. That we're kind of getting a little more. Yeah, that might be what it is. Just some placeholder stuff. Like this obviously isn't great, but it's also not the focal point of the drawing. I suppose I could go for like a little more under here. Hint of a form, maybe. I don't know. I feel like this might be taking away rather than adding to the sword, even so. Um, I'll try the blending. We'll try our big textured blender. And that just kind of wiped it out. Maybe like small textured blender. Soften all of it a little bit. We could try a similar thing with the cloak, although it's, you know, a different material, so it might not work so good. We could do our multiply, clip it. There we go. Grab cloak color, get like a slightly more saturated one, and then go for it. Whoops. And we could probably add some wrinkles with something like that. Not really quite what we're aiming for, though. Well, that does get a surprisingly velvety looking texture almost. Well, it's intriguing. I do think it sort of detracts from the sword, though. Ought to either all be that level of detail or perhaps none of it. So, we can put that away. We can give our sword... I don't know, I guess what I ought to do... I'm still going to post it vertical. Now, it'd be a fun challenge to try to 3D model Swordtember, but I think I just crossed my mind like, ooh, we could have a full 360 rotation if I 3D modeled it. There are some minor challenges with doing that, perhaps. Let's see. Oop, not crest. Sorry, the crest blade. Okay, yeah, no, that should definitely stay around 50. I feel like I should add another layer clip to it. And maybe just like fill this one as much as I can. Maybe just grab a giant millipen for it. Oops, not with red, with blue. Not even showing through at all. Lovely. Oh, and everything's clipped to it instead of the blade flat. Well, that is striking, but not really in the right way. Although actually, there is something to be said for just like a few. That's what we almost did with the Crystalian originally, was just some like blue and red strikes with it. Really, maybe that's what we do. Maybe okay. Unclip this layer. Let's do a little bit of experimenting. I realize we're basically at time. Something like that going in here, maybe? We could even pull the inks above it. All the inks blend into that blue super thoroughly. Okay, assuming we move the crest blade's location, which is something I kind of didn't want to do, but ought to do, really. Let's not move any of that, but literally select all of these, select grab layer. No. Okay, select everything except that. Just move our sword sort of to the center more. Let's try more of a bold red, or bold red streak rather. Okay. Not on the inks layer. Ah. Looks like some sort of crusader thing, or like 1930s propaganda. Not really what I'm aiming for. I could go for like a super abstract, rather than just going blind like this. Oh dear. Somewhere along the way I painted something red that shouldn't have been painted red. Let me undo some of that. Okay. Okay, move the inks up one. Move all of these to the center. Let's think on the blue. Assuming that we do like a red, not on the inks layer. That's the mistake I keep making. Assuming we do kind of like an abstract like curve for the Crystalian. And We lose the inks when we have this blue, but the sword itself looks better with the. Really gotten myself into quite a pickle with this background, haven't I? What if I just do a black background? What if? Remove this one. Why is there a very faint red? Why is there a faint red glow? What is that? That's on this? Oh, it's. I see. Okay. A close to black navy blue. Yep, that pop's great. Should have just started with that. What I ought to do also is get one of those. I've seen a lot of people where they put like a little banner with the title of it below. I ought to make a template for that. Maybe we'll do that in the future, but not tonight. Tonight, I think we are wrapped up. I think that we will pick back up next time. We'll see what the next swords coming through are. Maybe I'll be able to keep this up every day. It's unlikely, certainly not to this degree of focus. But I am actually quite shocked at how well this turned out in 2 hours. Not to toot my own horn, I'm sure someday I'll look back at this and be like, wow, that's awful and cringy and geometric or whatever the new words are. Quite squarp. Anyway, but I hope y'all had a good time. I've certainly enjoyed this one. We'll get these posted and live, and I will see y'all in the next one. Have a good one.